Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. Welcome to a kind of guide here for the Cresta fight for One Vision. Okay, so here's the thing. This fight is going to be a toughie. And I should probably point out, originally when I was doing this whole video thing, I actually wasn't meaning to even do a guide for it in the first place. I actually was trying to do one of the beginner guides. That thing took a whole lot of takes, and during one of those little rambles, I just kind of randomly wandered into the Cressida fight and figured, you know what, screw it, let's roll with this. But didn't like the original commentary. Ended up running out of time about like 2/3 of the way through the fight, so it was kind of awkward. But either way, it went decently enough to at least cover the basics over what's potentially useful there, kind of just some ins and outs of stuff that you might want to keep in mind. So I should point out that this particular one also ran into a secondary awkward issue in which when I actually got around to getting that last third done, I didn't realize that the update that had come in between there had actually updated a lot of the equipment that people were holding. So the original time that I went through it to continue my save file, and then when I went back for the video, were entirely different kind of means of actually getting it done. Anyway, so that was a bit of an unexpected one, but let's go ahead and get into it here. So, what makes this fight difficult? Long story short, there's just a absolute ton of stuff going on at any given time. Just like the original vanilla version, there are essentially three leaders that can respawn units ad nauseum here, and they also have an absolute ton of reinforcements, and all of those reinforcements are going to be fairly difficult. Those leaders are going to be kind of off, scattered about all over the map, and additionally, that whole time you're dealing with hordes basically surrounding you. On top of having to also go and raise Cresta back up on her feet, and bear in mind, since it is One Vision, you will have to tap out one of your units in order to get her back on her feet. So you are running one less unit than you normally would. You're running far more difficult units that you're actually fighting, and a lot of the vanilla strategies don't actually work here because they can simply circumvent them. So for example, Vice will just be able to run around you and go run through the water if you try to block off that whole area there. So anyways, this is the team that I ended up going with here. So I had a couple archers, a couple of skirmisher types. I had Hobrim here for kind of anti-armor duty. I had my recruiting soldier guy here for basically holding territory and just kind of doing the whole hardline skirmisher thing. I was using my spear Terenius here because I figured there were probably a pretty decent number of kind of medium weight units, and additionally just wanted to spread those debuffs around. And on top of that, have Denim running as a Wind and Divine Warlock. I've got my fencer over there running Dagger Shield. Funnily enough, she does not make it through to the end of this fight, even though she's actually currently alive in my main save file, for exactly the same reasons that I mentioned earlier. First time through, I actually revived my soldier guy that got knocked out, who was then able to hold a huge part of that fight. Unfortunately, he basically got kind of force equipped a Bloodwing, which is like a 10 level advantage equipment wise when I reloaded the save file. That's why you never use temporary saves when you're switching between updates. Anyway, so let's talk about some of these things that make it difficult. Nightwings are going to be the main thing. So these are going to be a kind of AI only variant of the Vartan, typically going to be running either daggers or swords and then a ranged offhand weapon. Some of the ones that come in as reinforcements will be coming in with various types of blow darts. These particular ones come with throwing weapons and bows. But the main thing is that unlike the Vartan there, they actually specialize in ninja stuff as opposed to some of the other things, which essentially means that they're able to run decoy all the time. So they're able to run decoy. They will shadow bind your units and stuff like that. So they'll stop. They'll shackle, or not shackle, but they'll bind. They are constantly on the move. They are constantly disabling units, and they typically will take 2 to 3 units to take down themselves, despite having relatively poor defense. Like if their evade is down, for example, there are ways to get around it using things like shell bust or using essentially just anything that counts as an action move that also counts as a physical move can be used to get rid of their evade. But yeah, they're pretty difficult to deal with if you don't have the time to deal with it, which you oftentimes won't, because again, you are completely surrounded over the course of this whole thing. And on top of that, they can sleep bomb your units, they can double turn, and additionally, they can just turn on Mind's Eye to decide that they are now no longer vulnerable to the main attacks that actually counter them. So that's, that's always a bit of a thing. Anyway, so, with that said, let's go ahead and talk about a few tricks that can help you out pretty significantly. For one thing, you definitely want to bring flyers and or some means of making flyers. So, for example, if you have any support kind of air casters that are able to use hover draft, if you've got angel wings, if you've just got natural flyers, those are going to be pretty handy. A lot of your natural flyers will have a harder time here due to their overall lower stats and such. This is a fight that's got a lot of heavy units on it. It's got a lot of damage of all types flying around on all of it, so you generally want to bring your hardier guys along for this one. Additionally, any MP building up that you're doing, do it at the very start of the fight here before everybody's getting close. You just simply won't have time to do it later. One of my archers that I'm running here is going to be by my damage soaking one, so that's this guy over here. Basically, he's running a helmet and gloves, as well as a silver shortbow. And actually, silver shortbow is the only bow that I would recommend using here. A lot of the units are undead, and I'm not talking about just the zombies. Given that it is one vision, they actually had the means to implement turning the bosses into actual proper zombies. So they will have full zombie status, meaning that something like the silver shortbow will absolutely shred them. For those that didn't know, Balder and, in One Vision's case, also Silver will be extra effective versus undead units. So if you have somebody with high accuracy, high ranks, that kind of thing, they can absolutely dominate here. So basically, a lot of the difficulty in this fight comes from the fact that you have to constantly push, but also constantly defend. You have to be at 100% at basically all times. I'm not sure what took so long with this particular decision. It's a pretty clear one. But essentially what you're looking at here is a thing where you have to push through this kind of immediate front line of 5 units here. While it does start off as 5, it is functionally 7. Because those Nightwings are going to immediately come and support. You basically want to try and avoid the left side if you can. Later on, if you have a better defensive unit, and that's actually what I tried to pull here, like for example a defensive Valkyrie or something like that, they would want to hold the left side down the road, but for the meantime there's just simply too much stuff coming through there to try and block it off. That's the vanilla approach, that you just simply block off that left walkway. This time around I really wouldn't advise it because they can just run on the water, they can just quickly surround you. You don't have the time to get there. Okay, also, accuracy buffs are going to be very important. Again, there's a lot of very evasive units here, but there's also a lot of tough units, so if you have any of your heavier hitters, like I have Murden running around with a two-hander, that's going to matter a lot here. Additionally, I should probably mention that Zealot Hammers are also extremely useful. So if you've never tried those yet, they're the side-graded one-handed hammer variants, and basically they're going to do the Balder effect, except it's for a regular hammer weapon, which makes them really, really good here. So, specifically 2 units that you want to bring along are going to be Murden and Gildas if you have them. If you're on neutral, just bring Murden. But the whole Zealot Hammer as well as a Fervor setup is it's really hard to overstate how good it is here. Though I will say, hold off on completely killing off many of the weaker units that you see, because it's also a little bit of a trap. See, the thing is, I mentioned earlier that there's reinforcements, and the thing is, there's 3 sources of those reinforcements. So we've got 1 reinforcement that's going to be coming from Nybeth, obviously, but also the other 2 leader ladies as well. So those are a little bit easier to reach. Typically, I found that the best way to handle it is to deal with them first. Then to try to use any kind of pressure, ideally bows of any variety that you've got, to put pressure on Nybeth. Now, the reason that it's useful is because while you probably won't be able to kill him off with only 1 of your units, typically this will stop the first 2 from spawning reinforcements, sure, but it also will mean that one of his skeletons that loves to use a Lancet will keep using that to heal him, functionally allowing your archers to damage a heavy unit while they're going and attacking a squishier one. Because it's not like Nybeth is particularly tough, he's just difficult to get an angle on. So you typically want to take this entire top area before you even start firing at him. Also, another benefit of short bows here is this kind of a short-range section right here, where he's able to get in a bit more close and lay in a bit more pressure. Now, it's worth mentioning that the skeleton and the orc, the blue ones that are up here, you probably won't be able to finish them off anytime soon. They are extremely tough. I believe both are hoplites. One might be a juggernaut, I'm not 100% certain. But either way, they are extremely tough to put down. And as you can see here, it's difficult to get around these guys' defenses. So basically, while he does have a lot of physical attacks, he won't really be focusing on that. However, we will be using silencing arrows on our archers at this point to make sure that we can go ahead and disable their caster, at least the ones that we can, the one that we can reach right now. And this will allow for making sure that we're not getting splashed while we're getting up there. However, we will be doing some splashing of our own, because while these guys are extraordinarily evasive and also have, full physical immunity right now, they don't have anything for magic stuff. So getting close and rushing with burst spells is absolutely doable. It's also worth noting that Vice, the longer that you let him be alive, he will start dropping booby traps everywhere, which can potentially screw you over real bad. So what I'm going to do is actually try to block him from getting close for a little bit here, but then additionally we're going to try and get the archers on him as soon as possible. So we're going to go ahead and put a unit in his way here. I forget, I'm pretty sure I was going for the breach setup here. Did I go for a weaken? Apparently I went for a weaken. Okay. He's running daggers. I'm not entirely sure why I went for a... or no, false strike. That does make sense. Okay. False strike does make a good bit more sense because you want to try to get him to miss some of his attacks. Now, I mentioned earlier that you don't want to finish off the weaker units. Why is that? Because if you finish off anything here, there's a very, very real chance that they'll actually end up coming back with potentially 5 or more... of the better blue units. Now, yeah, the blue units are more likely to be, one life kind of units, not undead, all of that kind of thing, but these basic generic zombies are so much easier to deal with than, for example, if he decides to spawn 4 longbow archers on you. So, either way, just try to pin these guys down if you can, but don't go too nuts with trying to kill them off. And ideally, again, run Fervor and White Knights if you've got it. Simply helps quite a bit. Additionally, Shell Bust. It didn't proc its secondary effect right there, but Shell Bust is insanely good for this particular section. For those that missed the second half of its description, it allows you to shake off debuffs. So effectively, every now and then, I don't believe the actual odds are stated in game. I want to say it's somewhere like I think it was somewhere like the 30-40%, something like that. But you've got the means to be able to shake off all debuffs on that unit, which is really, really strong. Additionally, if you've got those longbows that have been putting out some pretty solid damage so far, make sure to spam things like Morpheus. With how much stuff is going on in this fight at any given time, just having the ability to disable somebody, just any of the heavy units, whenever they're not in a perfect position, it's going to pay off pretty darn well. Like, for example, knocking off that unit right there prevents them from going and taking one of the 2 blocking areas, which allows our units to get through. Additionally, it's worth mentioning, on the Terenius, there are, again, a lot of heavy units here, and a Terenius can be very self-sufficient in any map that has a lot of high health units, because drain health is based off of a percentage of health. And yes, that lady did just roll a 2% block. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can get bogged down in this fight. So the more self-sufficient that you can make people, all the better. And additionally, as many kind of slowdowns as you can inflict, the better. So for example, things like heavy shields with stuns on there are going to be invaluable for a lot of their heavier hitters. Silencing arrows will be very valuable. It's just generally a good time. Also, wait a minute. No, he has that same throwing axe. That axe that he's got upgraded into the Bloodwing. For those that were curious as to why he wasn't being used for the second part of the video. And by the way, for those that do want a sort of no in-caps version of this, when I circle back around to it, I can do a sort of safer version of the strategy, but this got very close to pulling off a no in cap anyway. It basically was one moment where I overstretched that one soldier a little bit too far that ended up causing the issue. The main thing is you want to buff up a lot. You want to use a lot of those silver short bows, and ideally, for the first half of the fight, those short bows should find some way on top of that rooftop to the top right there. That gives them good coverage for this entire area. And then as soon as possible, as soon as things feel a little bit more in control, that's when they should transition to pressuring Nybeth. And then once Nybeth gets to about 40% or so, he'll run away, which allows for controlling the area a bit more. Additionally, you want to leave Cresta on the ground as long as possible until you've dealt with at least the first two casters here. But after that, you definitely want to get her back on her feet, seeing as, considering, again, this is the One Vision version, you will actually always basically get her recruited. For those that didn't know, in this version, the requirements to get her on your team are a lot more lax, so that's just generally a pretty good thing. So yeah, bring lots of burst spells, bring those anti-undead short bows. Fervor on White Knights is completely non-negotiable. If you didn't bring it, you made a mistake, and you definitely have them at this point. Using things like Fated Circle and an instrument is also very useful here. These guys can't be talked down, but they can be charmed. So I didn't run it in this particular case, but when going and planning for a no incaps version of this, that was definitely one of the kind of top picks there, of just constantly re-upping a Fated Circle with binds, as well as charms on the Spupra in this case. Just because that charm chance, if you can guarantee that, that's going to be paying off pretty darn well. All right, let's see what else here. So, okay, another thing I also didn't utilize here well, okay, I partially utilized it, but could have been utilized a bit better. Longbows and just kind of, well, short bows in general, a lot of the damage that they're doing to these undead and things like that are going to be courtesy of their overhead damage, and strengthen boosts that by quite a bit, so always keep them strengthened is kind of the main takeaway there. Additionally, also, it's worth noting that there's an absolute ton of AoE spam that happens pretty regularly over the course of the fight. Not all of them are threatening, like that guy over there was basically bouncing off, but just yeah, bear in mind that you will want to pull units away from each other whenever you can, just because those tend to come pretty quick, especially once Nybeth is within range there. This is why I typically want to attack him only with longbows, well, not longbows, but the short bows. Just because, obviously, he's going to do a lot of splash damage, so we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. It's actually worth noting also to not bother trying to send a heavy unit to go fight him. Thing is, those heavy units have a tendency to get into other fights on their way to the guy. And if they're half health or lower, he can instantly delete them. That's one of those things that the necromancers can do this time around. It's actually something you can do as well. There's an ability called Beckon, and given the fact that he's attacked all the time, he will have the TP to use it. But Beckon doubles any injury that a target has. So this is that's going to be one of those things that did screw over a lot of kind of rushing down with the two-hander attempts, which feels like it was by design. Also, if you are running a cleric, remember how good a parrying staff and a parrying helmet can be. Yeah, that was a double parry versus Vice. That stuff, she's still at rank 1, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember for sure, but either way, she wasn't running that build for a terribly long time. Did I figure out to do the Shadow Break here, or did I just completely miss that play here? Dude, do Shadow Break! What are you doing, idiot? Anyway. Yeah, that Shadow Break would have been perfect there. Would have been Damage plus Breach on both of those, but oh well. Anyway, so this is the scenario that you want to avoid. So he only spawned in 2, but later, I thought this was the big moment. Later on, not to really spoil the video here, because I didn't really like the commentary of the original kind of quote-unquote live version here. Not that this is necessarily that much better, but it isn't trying to make it into a beginner's guide. Yeah, don't ask. For some reason, I thought this made sense for a beginner's guide. Don't question it. Anyway, so what we'll notice later is the nightmare scenario, where he actually does replace his entire team. The team itself is damaged here, and you know, we just got Cresta back on her feet, and they managed to spawn with a bunch of archers. So stuff can go really badly really quickly in this fight. So Just kind of bear that in mind. Okay, one more thing that I should mention is what I like to call the threshold of this map. So that's going to be around where Canopus is right there. As soon as you pass that and start getting to revive Cressida, that's typically when you're kind of already in the danger zone as far as the casters on the other side. And also, I should also point out, what was I saying here? Oh, as far as Chariot goes for this one, so if you reset, essentially, if you reset your turn, it actually doesn't count as a Chariot usage in the PSP version. I'm pretty sure most are aware of that. Again, that's kind of the classic chess rule there. But basically, if you misclick, you do have that option, just so you know. Anyways, okay. One more thing that's worth mentioning. Right now, it's a throwing axe. This was before the most recent update, but it is worth keeping something like javelins on somebody, just because that hobble chance is also going to be really useful here for whenever you're moving around this much, especially if you manage to get one of those on one of their Bloodwings, or Nightwings, rather. So yeah, hobble pays dividends here. Man, those guys with their friggin' silence on clerics, like, it kind of is a bit of a self-defeating thing because the cleric can just instantly tabula rasa, but otherwise they wouldn't have to. Anyway. Okay, one more thing I failed to bring up to this point. With the zombie archer. One of the reasons that I was definitely willing to bring him here is that you really get a massive advantage bringing a zombie to this fight, because Cressida is going to have what was it? Animate Dead on her. Now, the reason that this is important is because she basically will always have TP available on her, and she's actually a really good unit. She just starts off damaged. You know, make your own emo jokes right here, but as soon as you get her out of that damaged state, like, this was by no means an ideal situation here. It's why I was trying to buff her up a little bit, because I didn't know if they would try to attack her with ranged attacks. But I got two of my guys disabled. I got her back up on her feet, but she's damaged. And yeah, she's at half health, surrounded by relatively quick units. But thankfully, due to the way everybody's spread out, she was just barely out of range, and they managed to get into position here, take up a spot near that rooftop, and then start firing down on everything around. So immediately the shortbows get to work, trying to clear up the stuff on the bottom in order to let the White Knights kind of carve their way through. And again, I should have just left them down there instead of trying to revive them. I should also point out that Cresta is fairly evasive, and honestly, she's just a pretty solid unit overall. Like, if you have a zombie, she'll generally bring back that zombie every time that they get downed. If you have, for example, any kind of bunched up enemy units, she'll be really good at countering them. Like, she does a really solid job of all that stuff. Anyway. So, Animate Dead is not really a problem that you have to worry about here. Generally, zombies will just kind of sort of have their normal timers. The reason for this is because the only Animate Dead sources are going to be the bosses that you're hunting down anyway. So, just kind of bear that in mind. Anyways, is she? Yeah, she was barely able to finish him off. It was a bit of a risky play there. Vice No gets beaten to death by a priest. Like, oh, sorry, Chief, I gotta beat him to death with this bat. Just like, imagine that the cleric's just got this boss next. Like, yeah, this asshole's being a zombie over here. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so with that being said, again, you don't want to get rid of these weak guys. If you are looking to do no in-caps, leave the weaklings alive. Because the stuff that comes back will be way stronger, which we'll see in just a moment. Anyway, and again, remember that your White Knights are pretty good to have out in front, really good to have as bait for any of those debuffs that are coming in, because again, Shell Bust has the ability to shake off those debuffs. So, really handy stuff there. And additionally, as far as as not having enough healing around to be able to deal with some of those potential scenarios. That is another advantage of the White Knight, as Time of Need not only advances the RT counter of those units, it will also heal them for that amount as well. So again, they're basically purpose-built to dominate this fight. All right. So with one of their main kind of DPS units out of the way, as well as two of their support units out of the way, this means that we can start working on working our way towards getting Cressida safe. Now, we're just kind of swarming units in right now to try to keep everyone off her and try to keep her alive. So, you know, this is going to be, again, a bit of an imperfect setup. And if she wasn't standing right there, it also would have been the perfect time to use the draw out ability. Went for a Soul Strike here. It was a bit of a low chance roll, but I had to risk it because in this particular case, that guy was going to be a bit of a threat, so just went ahead and got him out of the way, as well as was going and borrowing a bit of MP from Denim, because he could always attack with his book, but getting those Soul Strikes with Hobrim was pretty important. So for those that never used the class, why is Hobrim's Soul Strike important? So it does fixed damage is the thing. So basically Soul Strike is going to be a basic attack plus whatever your MP is, and it just dumps that MP bar into a flat amount of extra damage. And versus the heavy armor units that you run into here, it's going to be one of the best ways to carve through them, outside of just disabling them and walking away. And really, that is the kind of ideal scenario. They use your short bows early on, you disable their reviving units, and then you go and use the Morpheuses built up to put the heavy units to sleep. Their turns take a really long time. They're going to be out of commission for a really long time. However, when it comes to actually killing off those heavy units, very few are going to be able to handle it as well as Hobrim does, just because of that fixed damage. The other one that's actually really useful, that's a little bit more risky, is what I've got running on Denim, and that's going to be Agony, which is going to essentially do damage based on how close you are to the middle of your health bar. So with health boosting equipment, as well as his health bar where it is, he typically can do a locked-in roughly like 200-ish damage, like 160, 180-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. But either way, essentially he's able to do a really solid number on those guys. And if you have a Necromancer, something like Beckon can also work, but it might be difficult to get them into position. Additionally, you got the classic of getting a lot of poison going, though given how much is going on, poison won't necessarily help that much in this fight. Now, okay, there is one thing that I should have played a little bit differently here, which was when it came to that Rune Fencer over there, or to the Valkyrie, I should say. So by herself, she's fine if she stayed right there, and that particular tile is a particularly safe tile, just because it helps you out with potentially only facing two of them at once, while hopefully baiting a kind of faster unit to try to cross into the water. And if they do that, you can then retreat a little bit, and then you're still only facing one or two units. So it's a good place for kiting. Unfortunately, for some reason, I decided to get a bit more aggressive with it and push her forward. I don't remember what exactly caused that, but it was a bad idea all the same. All right. So at this point, we're getting pretty kind of locked into the center here. It's looking pretty decently controlled. But again, we're getting pretty close to the nightmare scenario here. We have several units disabled, and we're kind of carving through these heavier units. Again, even a heavy claymore here is not doing very much, but it was very likely this fervor that sealed the deal here, because we're just starting to carve through all of these guys, you know, slowly pushing our way through, as it were. I don't know why I chose to put that ghost to sleep, but should have put one of the heavier units or one of the Nightwings to sleep, but oh well, mistakes were made. Again, this was a very imperfect video. It's just the one that I had done already, and was the one that I had around at the time. Anyway, also Hector also does count as undead, so short bows can still hurt him. So despite being a heavy armored knight, yeah, he is still vulnerable to that damage. And again, whatever zombie units you're running here, whether you're running, you know, your skeletons or you're running something like this this bait archer here, remember again that the only sources of exorcism are going to be the units that you're hunting down anyway. So if you're keeping pressure on them, you can potentially prevent things like banish, and prevent them from getting killed off, which means that you can safely use them to tank damage versus all these other units. Give them reflection. So, for example, I gave him a shard shield as well as reflect damage on his skill list. This meant that he's able to reflect basically everything, so that's pretty handy there. But right there was the moment where the no incap run died there, because again, I should have put that guy to sleep instead of the ghost. I don't know why I was so worried about the ghost that day. Oh well. Additionally, it's worth pointing out that Wind Scythe on a Terror Knight is also really, really good here. Just because it allows you to potentially leech. You can get into position, leech with Wind Scythe, and then still have enough to use your debuff moves. Again, one of the few cases of a very kind of TOR type of action. Anyway, so yeah, those reflects on that archer pay dividends. Like, not only does he occasionally get a counter hit to land, I should probably point out his actual weapon skill is pretty awful. But yeah, just don't go crazy knocking out the undead units. Eventually, that comes back to bite you. It's just a bad idea. Don't do it. Anyway, so yeah, this was where the mistake was made. Now, granted, at the time, I was thinking we have this more or less under control. I completely forgot that he's able to spawn more units. So, okay, so we go for the blitz here, try to kind of knock out this guy. Figure, you know what, she can definitely take almost anyone in a 1v1. This is fine. We've got our we've got our dudes over here that are locked down, but again, it's fine. What I should have been doing is focusing on using more Shell Bust. But again, that's for the no incap version. Because again, Shell Bust is really good for breaking through evade, getting rid of your debuffs. It really pays dividends here. Okay. Another thing to point out is due to the kind of weird situation as far as defense and higher stats and everything. Typically, softer magic types, like your standard AoEs and such, outside of very dedicated casters, probably will have a harder time getting through. So you'll notice I almost never use like Judgment on Denim, despite that getting a damage bonus here. So the way that I was using it was that Aura was used as sort of the bread and butter, gets through most defenses kind of attack, whereas Agony was used in more kind of like no you type situations, where he would get hit and then immediately come back with like a 200-ish, and then go back and heal himself with a Distilled Life. So that's kind of his game plan here. The clerics were mostly trying to keep each other alive and trying to hold off versus Hector. They were doing a solid job of it, so either way, they're maintaining control just fine. Like, they've got every advantage in the world over there. There's really no sense in trying to have them attack anybody, so we just went for more heals. Because Hector's a knight, and generally speaking, knights are going to be the least threatening thing that you can run into here, just because of how much stuff there is on the map. So this was where stuff started to get bad. Because, again, he can summon a lot of units at once, and as you can see right there, he just decided to casually drop in an extra 8 reinforcements, just because he can kind of do that. So, needless to say, stuff was not looking very good for the Valk over there, but either way, we had Cresta back on her feet, so that's a plus. It's worth noting that as far as overall kind of support and everything goes, Cresta is actually really, really good once she survives her first couple rounds. Like, once you get the aggression off her, once you get some sort of support going where she's not off by herself, she's actually a really strong unit. So any of the kind of melee guys can be more or less ignored at that point. Just because if you block those tiles on the bottom, they're going to be forced to funnel down that direction. You can more or less force a 1v1 there, but it's the casters and the ranged units that are a problem. And you may notice, there's only 3 of those 8 units that are not casters or archers, and you don't know what you're going to get every time, so there's also that. Additionally, if any units go down into the water down there, one thing that I didn't pay attention to right here is that you can leaden them to keep them there permanently. So they'll just be completely stuck, but also if you want to prevent any of those Nightwings from getting close, dead anchors to keep them pinned to the ground will also be pretty helpful. Again, bear in mind that one of the skeletons that he can have Nybeth can have over on his side does come with Lancet, which means that he'll sacrifice his health to heal Nybeth's. So while he doesn't have any traditional healing, as it were, he does have he does have that going for him. Okay, I think this might be the first moment of actually using Shell Bust right. Good, you know, high evasion. It's only got like 25% chance to hit these guys, but still, it's something. And again, with Cresta back on her feet, the bait archer does their job really well because, well, Nybeth is going to focus on offense. He generally won't focus on trying to banish anyone, but usually Cresta will outspeed him, use Animate Dead, and then there you go, you're instantly reset again. So this is, like, by far a lot more kind of I guess you could say high overall stakes than usual in terms of the amount of things that can go wrong at any given time. And I should also point out at this point that if you're thinking, okay, so just kind of hang back and deal with all of those units, he'll bring in more. Like, that's not all of his reinforcements by any means. He will just keep on bringing in more. I don't believe the list is longer than it was in vanilla, but they are way tougher to deal with. So while you can't technically hold out at this point and just kind of deal with all of his reinforcements, he does eventually run out. It's generally safer to try to disable him sooner than later, and then attempt to more or less isolate the melee units. Just try to ignore the ranged ones and just kind of leave heavy armor facing them, and deal with the faster units and casters as much as you can. But again, it's going to be difficult one way or the other. Like, this is just not a scenario you want to be in. Alright. So, okay, but yeah, I more or less considered it kind of done at this point, because, again, you know, we have her on her feet, and that's usually the moment. But there's a good bit more to go. So, okay, they go and they start getting their archers in, and these archers can vary in terms of what they come with. But in this case, we got a bunch of very long-range bows on them, so that's going to be a nuisance, but it's not going to be the end of the world. And additionally, our Valkyr, if you are also thinking, you know, she's going to escape just going up those north stairs, that's probably the best play. I agree, that would have been a really good play. But unfortunately, they end up acting before then. Okay, so this was, like, 2 months later, I think. This was after the update now. You'll notice that there was a sudden camera change. So this is going to be when I actually bothered to get around to finishing it, because, you know, you forget these things. I just had the mid-fight saved. Anyway, so, okay. So at this point, we're running the exact same strategy as before. I decided to push Hobrim up. That was a bit of a mistake, to be completely honest. What I should have done, and what I did in my initial one, was actually go for Soul Strikes versus some of the closer units, kind of stick closer to the middle, and eventually, I think I sent the zombie forward to go deal with getting her back up on her feet. I forget how I handled it exactly that first time, but I think that's what I did. Anyway, so as far as items go, more or less the idea here was just to turn on some evasion for her, try to get her to avoid some of these attacks. There's a lot of things coming her way. She's basically got, like, in total about 5 units that are going to try to gang up on her at once. Not really a whole lot of point in trying to get rid of that fear when they're going to lament right away anyway. You know, not exactly worth rolling for a 40% chance and hoping for the best. Yes, I realize the irony of rolling for a 38% chance and hoping for the best earlier. Anyway, so what we're going to do is go for finishers and anything else we can drop on Nybeth. I'm bringing the zombie in close to try and draw aggro away from the Valk, but again, it's only a matter of time before she goes down, unfortunately. Additionally, we're going to go and start putting pressure on the ghosts here because, again, you know, extra silver damage, as it were. As well as putting on Eagle Eye, just kind of re-upping that to make sure that Cresta is not getting targeted by ranged weapons, because, well, she is evasive. She's not evasive enough to consistently tank a bunch of ranged weapons. Anyway, start bringing in the stuns from Gildas here. Again, guaranteed stuns off of heavy shields, just really, really solid. And we go ahead and throw out a Shell Bust, get all our debuffs reset. So very useful tool here, not in every situation, but in most situations that matter. And unfortunately, all attacks are looking a bit dicey for Murden here. I don't know why the hell I just let him take that attack, but whatever. Best turn ever. Best turn ever for Murden. Great job. 100% perfect play in every way. And then, of course, we get multiple units petrified. Again, playing this very well. Oh boy. But again, the thing was, the one part that I do remember about when I did this initially was that I brought back the soldier guy, and then when I did that, when I was actually doing this, this is actually the second take of this second part of the video, I brought him back. I was like, wait a minute, why can he do like 120 all of a sudden versus Nibeth? Like this. It seems way higher than it was before, and then it's like he's got like a 10 level advantage weapon on him all of a sudden, because of the rework to thrown weapons that happened in the meantime. So yeah, so that was a thing, and sure, I still have the original patches to turn it back to this other version, and I could remake it again and could redo all that stuff again. I just wasn't feeling it, so I just decided to go a different way, which resulted in this one playing out a bit differently, where yeah, instead of having no casualties, that fencer, or why do I keep wanting to call her a fencer? In this case, she's clearly a Valkyrie. She has a cool name right from the get-go. She doesn't need to make up for the fact that Rune Fencer is just an awkward name, for just calling them whatever. Anyway, whatever. She doesn't make it is the point. And funnily enough, she almost makes it. It is a very, very small, kind of almost depressing speed tie that happens. But you'll see it when it happens. Anyway. So we got to deal with this petrification situation now. Never underestimate a sudden spellbook rush with its ability to completely delete multiple units at once. And unfortunately, yeah, Frizzwood over there ends up going down. Not much that we can do about that. In hindsight, one thing that I actually could have done that I wasn't paying attention to at the time is that Flight Feathers don't require Field Alchemy. They actually are just usable right from the get-go. For some reason, at the time, I thought they did, so she actually could have flown out of there in this scenario. Anyway, so we've got a few moves that are potentially available. Figured I'd try to go for the Aura versus this guy. It's just enough to kill him off. Puts Denim in a pretty solid spot. 58%, not perfect, but, you know, it could land, so it does. So that gets that guy deleted. And versus the Nightwings, you may occasionally have to take some pretty low rolls, but you know sometimes you got to risk it. They are relatively low health, so they're kind of a high risk unit to take out in that particular way. The ideal way is overheads. Like if you've got them of any variety, overheads and/or kind of a spell strike, draconics are typically gonna counter them pretty darn well. Additionally, you know, Shell Bust and a White Knight is also solid, especially if you're running stuff like Spears. They do tend to be at awkward ranges sometimes. So, for example, Spears and Shell Bust, you Shell Bust, you get rid of your own debuffs, whatever they happen to have been at the time. You throw out those. You essentially get their defense lowered, and then from there hit them with a spear, which is going to, do pretty solid numbers as it were. And especially somebody like Murden is already pretty accurate right out of the box, so there's that too. All right, so we're looking a little rough as far as the team goes. But one more cool kind of White Knight tech that you can do here is to essentially just chow down on Ginseng for time of need. Gives you heals, gives you recoveries, gives you time resets. It's just good stuff. Unfortunately, one thing that is worth noting is that for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to boost RT for Cressida. Not really sure why, but anyways, it is what it is. It gets everybody else a more or less instant turn, so we have that as well. Also, for dealing with Nightwings, if you have any situations where they've suddenly gotten their shields removed by one means or another kind of quick and effective way of dealing with them is again with Hobram, with the Ghost Blade. Same thing as with a Soul Strike, it's just going to do whatever his MP bar is worth of damage, but again, they have fairly low health, roughly about 300, whereas a lot of your other heavies will be about 400, 500, that kind of thing. So in this particular instance, this means that he oftentimes can take off about half their health if he finds himself in a good position. Again, it varies, like, obviously there's going to be a lot of asterisks on that. If you have him running with a lot of high MP gear, you probably can get that number pretty decently high, but either way. Alright, so those guys are all going to end up doing their usual, like, chunky, heavy unit thing. Just send somebody down to block the gap at that point. There's really no sense in trying to fight them directly. Thankfully, that guy's shield was removed, and so we have yet another unit going down. Okay. Now, is this when we have the Drain Heart thing? Yes. I think it is. So there's, as I mentioned before, a lot of heavy units, so you can get pretty consistently good numbers against these guys using a percentage-based damage. In that case, I didn't have a good angle on the main guy that I wanted to attack. Actually, come to think of it, I totally did have a good angle. What the hell am I talking about? I could have put them where that bag is. Ah, well, whatever. It's fine. Apparently was not thinking straight at the time. Oh well. But yeah, that would have allowed for a basically guaranteed 68 versus that guy, which is pretty handy. Also, there was a little bit of a risky play that I could have done here, keeping Denim at half health to give him a bit more agony damage. Didn't end up doing that, but, you know, again, it's going to be very situational. There's going to be a lot of, you know, you could have done this, you could have done this, you could have done this. There's going to be a lot of that. Okay. So he's going to go ahead and curse him to remove his TP. Pretty clever play. I love that the AI actually does know how to do that. That if you have over 100 TP, they do seem to be pretty consistent about trying to use TP removing moves on you. Anyway, there's not much he's going to be able to do against Nybeth for the moment. He's just going to take very quick shots. One more thing that I should probably point out that's really beneficial for this fight is you might be thinking, like, well, you know, sure, short bows are good for taking out a few of those initial units, but long range would help quite a bit too. But bear in mind that it isn't just a range thing, and it isn't just a damage bonus thing. Short bows would still be pretty solid here, just because of their speed. Like, Edbert, he gets knocked out a lot, and I did try running this with a longbow kind of situation, and the main issue that came up was the fact that they were firing too slow to really affect the fight in too much of a positive way. However, short bows, in this particular instance, were very, very reliable in terms of being able to take quick, decisive shots. They weren't necessarily as much damage as the kind of fancier ones were, but still, it was definitely worth doing. Okay. One more thing to also mention here, if you did do the smart thing and brought along a flight support, at this point it's a good idea to actually send some of your White Knights over the river, just to be able to potentially further away some of those units there. There's not many classes that can get away with pulling that many rolls at once, but in the White Knight's case, it does end up playing out pretty well. Okay. Now, okay, so there's again a few ways to potentially play this out here. I should have been making far more use of disabling abilities, but either ways, we'll go ahead and take that quick short bow shot in that direction. If you're wondering why she did so much to that guy, the Nightwings are not undead. She's just strengthened, and the guy has next to no armor, so that's why she was doing such solid numbers. It was more or less just kind of a defensive breakthrough of sorts. Okay. So, with that said, this gets us back over to Nybeth's camp here, and you'll notice we're still keeping our distance, because it really is only a couple dark stars away from him, from the entire team just more or less getting flattened. So we do not want that to happen, ideally. But we're going to go ahead and try to help out this dude a little bit. He needs his True Strike to try and get these hits to land. His odds of landing him are still pretty low, and I really should have seen that action over there to take that shell bust and throw it versus the orc on the other side of the river, but didn't notice it at the time. Are you noticing a running theme? Yeah. It was during one of those tired weeks, but there we go. Cresta is just as much of a heavy hitter as her dad, so we're going to see her throwing out some pretty solid AoEs every now and then. And again, as I mentioned before, little pecks from our zombie are going to do just fine here with that short bow, and I really should have used him to get the Valk up at this point, but, you know, shoulda, coulda, didn't. Shoulda, coulda, didn't. It happens sometimes. Okay, so yeah, got lots of MP on the TK, so I just figured I'd try to get some stuff out from him. Alright. By the way, fun little side note, you might be wondering why that punch is doing so much from our archer. Simply put, he's relatively strong by himself. His skills are low, but he himself is pretty decently strong. But additionally, the boost from gloves actually does tend to make your punches do more damage, which is a nice little touch. It's not like it's specifically programmed to do additional punch damage specifically. It's just a sort of situation that works out. as with many of the cool notes in One Vision, it's just like, here's the thing that just sort of worked out in a neat way, you know. All right. More of that coffee. It's very basic coffee today. Ran out of anything to put in it, so we're just doing black coffee this morning. Any darn ways. Also, one thing that you got to run into at this point as well, especially if you summoned in archers, is if those Nightwings weren't giving you enough trouble before, they now definitely will be giving you more problems in terms of silencing siege bows. So they will generally be pretty much a complete bummer there. So we'll have to deal with that as it comes. And I should also point out, in terms of collecting bags and everything, there really isn't going to be too much to worry about as far as collecting bags. There aren't any particularly special drops out of these guys for the time being. I think maybe it might be that that Hector and Vice may drop something special, but I didn't notice anything that was unique or anything here. So just you're mostly focusing on the fight and keeping Cresta alive here. All right. So to that end, what the hell were we even doing at this point? I think I was just trying to get our top island cleared out to some degree. Unfortunately, it does take a pretty decently long time. And again, there's a lot of awkward angles and such. But if you do have Water Walk available on your units in any variety, or if you have Wade on their skill tree, this is going to be the time that it comes in very, very clutch. But for the time being, it's just not happening. So yeah, we're going to just fly our one guy over there. Bran is at full lives, so I'm not really too worried about anything happening to him there, so he's just going to lose one of those lives. It just really wasn't worth... well, it's not that it wasn't necessarily worth anything, it's just he had that overpowered weapon, and I'm not going to bring him back for just his stunning shield. So, again, this is basically just the demo right now, because I'm already, hell, like 20 plus hours into the save file past this point, but still. Okay. So, a few other things. Given how slow the orcs and such are, while they are intimidating in terms of health, and they will occasionally get a bigger bit of damage off, don't worry about them too much. Like, the chonky units you can mostly just kind of disable and leave off on their own. You'll notice, like, that knight over there can't really do very much, considering that he's melee only, and he's locked away on that tiny strip of land. They will eventually play themselves even harder, so that's a nice thing to look forward to. And at this point, we're starting to surround Nybath. Again, don't send a melee unit after this guy. In a lot of cases, thankfully that wasn't the case here, but in a lot of cases, he will just simply beckon them to death. It's just one of those things where they're typically going to be slow enough and high health enough that all the damage that they've racked up and managed to tank at this point turns their previously safe health bar into an absolute liability. Also, man, this chair is getting, like, nastily creaky. I need to oil it again. Gotta love that crunch. I only noticed it in videos as of recently. I'm just like, man, that's got that, like, old chair from the, like, frickin' 80s or whatever crunch to it these days. You don't hear it that much, but anyway. Okay, so he turns into a bird and he flies away, and that's kind of the magic moment. That's really when you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief and start hunkering down. And that's when I was thinking that Cressida would either revive my my archer, or that Myrddin would be able to get close enough to go use a stone. Because, again, the Valk just had her turn. Like, you'd think that that one of them would be able to make it, right? Yeah, so did I. Alright. But yeah, so this is more or less when we're wrapped up. So the melee guys, they can't do much of anything. The archers are just going to snipe at a distance, you know, as they do. There's not very much that they can do to affect the fight at this point. Anybody that's kind of locked away in these little islands is just free weapon experience for you. So if you've got any longer range weapons, if you've got any augments you'd like to rank up, go ahead and practice those on them there. And she's going for the most pointless stun ever, but alright. You'll see why in a moment. It was actually this hobble that did it, wasn't it? No, the hobble missed. Why did he get outsped so bad? Because he had a pretty solid amount of time since he last moved. I'm trying to remember why the hell he didn't make it. It might have been the animate dead thing. Maybe he was just out of range. Maybe I just didn't notice. This was a completely avoidable death. Yeah, I just didn't notice. Man, I didn't notice. Oh, man, that was a really bad play day. Bad play day. But that's the fun part about doing these after the fact, that you can kind of criticize your own stupid decision. Yeah, what I should have done is gone around the corner and revived her, but oh well. Because, yeah, there's really not too much value in having him over there right now, while he does have the whole anti-undead thing going for him. Not really worth it. Not really worth it at all. Let's go ahead and go for some decay on these. And you might notice that Knight played himself impressively well. They physically cannot move anywhere. They cannot attack anything. Those two are just completely harmless. The archers, try as they might, they can't really meaningfully do anything without any more kind of pressure support on their end. The last of that is this little skeleton, or not skeleton, but this ghost over here, so that's effectively just gone. They've got heavy, chunky guys, and they've got longbows. And again, like, those longbows will never really amount to much without some other pressure element. Archers, as always, are there to kind of exacerbate existing situations to the point of tipping, not actually for, one-shotting things like they were back in PSP. And that applies to both One Vision and Reborn there. Man, I can't believe that I messed up that bad as far as that unit goes. That's pretty embarrassing right there. Anyway, so yeah, the rest of this is just mop up for like the next 10 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead a little bit here to the end of the fight, because you kind of see where this is going. Valk ends up bleeding out, unfortunately. That was her last life there. We eventually, carve through the heavier guys. It's just mop up. And eventually the fight ends, but those archers, were being stubborn for a decently long time. The knights took a few bunks. And Vice, what else could I have done? Probably gone law route. Not worth it, to be honest, but alright. Then again, I haven't done One Vision Ranger yet, and I should also point out that if you're wondering what this part would be like with other classes, you can actually be here with a ton of different classes. In fact, I would wonder how Death Knight would actually do here, because you actually unlock the Death Knight for Denim by killing Diebold in this route. So that's... Actually, do you get it from killing Diebold, or was that from Farampa? I'm not sure, one of those, but I like to think that you unlock it for Denim by killing Diebold. So that's his unique kind of middle ground between the Terror Knight and the Necromancer. Kind of a cool thing. Anyway, okay, so with Cresta, as I mentioned, her requirements are much looser, to the point that if you haven't been actively antagonizing the Galgastani, she'll be willing to put all the nonsense aside to go join you. And if you're thinking like, well, that potentially goes in the face of her whole character thing here, I mean, think about it for a second. She already hates her dad. She's already given up on her country at this point. Like, she's already basically seen as a traitor. You've just helped her out. You've basically promised to get rid of the person that she hates. Why wouldn't she join you? Like, her options are be outcast and starve to death, or complete life's goal, basically. Like, it really doesn't make sense that her requirements are so dang high. Okay, so Cressida comes with a lot of good stuff to be a solid necromancer, and if you've been training necromancers, she's basically good to go out of the box. However, she also has kind of semi-unique access to the Oracle. This actually changed since I mentioned this last time, but the Oracle essentially has all of the old summoner things built into it. When it comes to the Oracle, essentially this is going to be Warren's class. So this also means that by getting her, you can actually train his class long before you get him, which is pretty darn useful. Oh, and apparently that was the end of the video there. So yeah, long story short, as far as Cresta goes, she's a really solid unit. Oracle is a pretty fun class, allows you to teleport and heal at the same time, gives access to a lot of different abilities, as well as basically the ability to use any summon type whatsoever. For those that have never kind of seen that in action, here, let's actually go back to this real quick just to have that on screen. So, okay, as far as the Oracle goes, / now is the Summoner, basically this means that if you want to have every summon of every type on hand, you can. It's a weird gimmick, but again, that's why it was worked into the Oracle, and the actual Summoner class was reworked, I think, into the Furia. I'm not sure. Either way, there's only a certain number of class slots available, and nobody was using Summoner. So it's a weird gimmick thing. But yeah, they do get access to every elemental type of summon and stuff like that. So yeah, that is this fight in a nutshell. Is it difficult? Yes. It's definitely one of the more difficult ones. There's just a lot going on at any given time, and you generally want to try to focus down those couple of leaders there. You generally want to focus on control. You want to make sure that Cresta has somebody else that can be targeted around her. Bring a zombie to that fight. Bring Silver Shortbows to that fight. Bring your White Knights to the fight. You're gonna have a much easier time. All right, so hopefully this was a helpful little ramble on this whole thing. Sorry for the losing the voice yet again. Yeah, y'all have yourselves a good one. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for stopping by, and, best of luck to you. All right, have yourselves a good one. Take care, and bye.